get to those at the end of the session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Amanda. Welcome everybody. My name is Ira Horowitz. I'm the founder of Corner Shop Creative. With me is Jenna from the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families. I will let her introduce herself in just a minute. Before we get in there, we are here today to talk about how nonprofits can adopt AI responsibly and effectively within the organizations and make it part of your organizational culture. And so what we're going to be going over today is just a quick overview of what the AI landscape looks like right now for nonprofits, why we are encouraging the adoption and why you should be making these changes now. How to get started. This is where most people tend to get stuck, is it's so overwhelming of everything that's out there. So how do you just get started with some of the AI tools and incorporate that into your practices? One of the biggest challenges is sometimes your leadership and the staff and people's willingness to adopt. And so we'll give you some strategies and thoughts around how to work with them. And then for me, the most important thing every nonprofit should have is some sort of AI policy defining when and how your organization and team members should be using AI effectively. So we'll go over some tips and recommendations for drafting that, and then leave you with some great toolkits and resources that you can take home. There's a lot of information out there for nonprofits to get started, and so we'll give you some of those resources. And then we'll wrap up with talking about some common pitfalls that people run into, as well as some ethical concerns to make sure that you are thinking most strategically and improving the way things are going. Before we get into all that, if you're unfamiliar with Corner Shop Creative, we are a digital marketing agency. We support nonprofits of all different sizes in pretty much 4 different areas in website design and development, custom WordPress development, hosting, maintenance, and support, and then content and digital strategies such as Google Ad Management, or helping you get found in some of these generative engine tools like ChatGPT. So if you have any questions about our services or need anything, feel free to reach out. Always happy to talk to folks. Jenna, would you like to introduce yourself and the coalition?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I am Jenna Czapleski. I am the development. I'm the director of communications and philanthropy at the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families. So we're a nonprofit organization based in the state of Wisconsin. We have a physical presence in the southeastern area of the state, but we manage all 72 counties. So we're working with families and parents and caregivers who are impacted by child welfare, out-of-home care, things like adoption and foster care and kinship care in all 72 counties across Wisconsin. So it's a pretty diverse landscape with a lot of change from urban to rural landscapes. So I am the solo member of our communications team, our communications department. So I manage 2 brands, actually several websites, multiple social media channels. So AI was something that has been really helpful for me, and I'm excited to share more about how I use it and my experiences.
Great, thank you, Jenna. Yeah, we'll be hearing from Jenna and specifically getting her perspective as we move forward, which I think is definitely very valuable. Most importantly, we've worked with Jenna for a good 8 years now, and we've built many sites together and work on lots of digital strategies. So always a pleasure to have Jenna with us. So jumping into things, so what is actually happening right now? So getting really basic, about 2.5 years ago, AI went mainstream. It went public for personal use, and within just the first 2 months, ChatGPT reached over 100 million users, which was faster growth than anything in the history of technology. So what that says to me is that everybody in your sphere is already using AI in some capacity. It's integrated in a lot of the tools that we have. Even when you're using Google, it's going to recommend how to write and things like that. So it's fully integrated, and everybody you're working with, your donors, your volunteers, your staff, are already using it. Our goal and what we want to do for this session is make sure that you're set up with the tools and frameworks so that you can fully deploy it and set policies at your organization so you can be using it more effectively. Throughout this period, the tools have gotten dramatically better. A few years ago, if you would write a prompt and ask for information, even out of ChatGPT when it was early, you weren't sure exactly what you were going to be getting in return. These days, it's gotten so much better that it can do so many things for you, especially around writing, researching, coding, and analyzing data that before was just unthinkable of being able to do it in the amount of time that AI is able to do it. And unfortunately, nonprofits are behind. We've seen a lot of stats that show me, I'm going to look at my other screen here, so apologies for looking that way. But we've seen a lot of stats and studies lately that show that that only about 4% of nonprofits have an AI policy right now. And 65% of people who use AI in their job at nonprofits are saying that it's more reactive or one-off. So it's not a full team effort or thinking about it. The stat was about 18% of organizations report using some sort of team workflow. So it's very small. And our goal is that nonprofits should be embracing this and should be stepping into the forefront in some of this AI use. So why should we adopt AI? We're not talking about this because, we should replace all employees with AI. That is not what AI is for. We believe that it is an assistant. It is an assistant tool that can help you do things faster and more effectively. And so I've worked at several nonprofits myself in the past. I've worked with them for dozens of years, and I've just seen every nonprofit be stretched incredibly thin. Somebody like Jenna, wears many hats and does lots of different roles. And so we're all stretched very thin and can never complete everything we want to. And my feeling is that AI is the solution to that. It can improve everything from communications to fundraising, to the way you do internal operations, to external programs. There are ways that you can incorporate it to speed up and improve the quality of everything you're doing. So drafting emails or donor acknowledgements letters just happens much quicker now. Things like summarizing meeting notes can happen automatically through the note taker tools. Building agendas, answering staff questions. I'm sure that if you talk to any HR person, they hate answering questions that are likely written down in a handbook. So give your employees tools to be able to answer these questions themselves. And then analyzing data and being able to kind of write reports and information from your programs can go a lot farther so that you can get more stuff done. But it's not just about the quantity and getting more stuff done. It's really about how AI can improve your quality. We see this a lot. The first point here with websites, we see one of the biggest pain points for websites is that a lot of images are missing the alt text for accessibility compliance. And so things like adding captions and alt text, which used to be really difficult and time consuming, can now just be done immediately through AI tools. And the alt text example has actually even been built into the latest version of WordPress so that AI can even generate alt text if you connect your WordPress site to an AI tool. So it's kind of moving in that direction, and we're able to do things that before we were either not doing or would be time consuming and difficult. And so that's one great area. But also just thinking of like the quality of writing tends to be better. You can create a more consistent voice. Here at Corner Shop, we had many people working on marketing over the years. And what we found is that our voice was different based on who was writing it. But now with AI, we're able to kind of have a consistent voice and be able to work within one brand voice and provide much higher quality. And similarly with research, that's the other area that we have really embraced it and used it. It would take hours for us to do like competitor research for a website or looking at what other sites and features were out there. Now, in no time, AI is able to kind of do a lot of that work for you. So it really can improve the quality of your work, not just the amount that you're doing. So Jenna, I'd love to kind of hear from you. What was the biggest pain point or the first pain point that really pushed you to start exploring AI?
Oh, so I don't think it was one single moment. So I had been kind of using different AI tools that maybe people don't realize are AI tools. Grammarly, for instance, I always had Grammarly running. It's like I love writing. That's what my background is in. But I think it's impossible to keep up with all of the grammar standards and the grammar rules. So I was using that in the background, and then as I'm kind of looking at the workload, I mentioned a couple of websites, multiple social media channels, deliverables for not only programs, but also for our donors and our stakeholders, those who support our work. And you're looking at it as a individual who kind of holds all of that responsibility. And you're thinking there has to be something that can help me. So I started playing around with AI. What can this do for us? What can help? How does this help us? And I'll be honest, I am a Claude girl. I am not qualified to promote one or the other, but Claude is my tool of choice. So started sharing those things with Claude, and it's amazing. When I first started playing around with him, like, I can get so much done. I can, I can do so much. I can draft my whole month social media calendar, my content for that. And even if I, had two sessions where one was a drafting session, then I always kind of set it aside and say, okay, now human eyes need to review this again. Never want to just take whatever the AI spits out at you and publish it for the world, So we always have that too. But it was really that I needed a thought partner. I needed a co-writer. I needed a reviewer. Sometimes just putting in, I need to send an email to someone. Does this make sense? Am I saying what I think I'm saying? Am I communicating what I'm hoping to communicate? So AI has become kind of that tool for me. Again, all with the understanding that, it doesn't replace another set of human eyes at the end of the day.
Exactly. That's a great point. I love hearing that it's like, yeah, check this or proofread this email to me. Because yeah, we're all moving so quickly. We're drafting so many things. I'm sure that I used to have tons of typos and issues in my emails, and now just being able to run it through there is great. Being able to critique things is one of the great uses that I like using AI for, because it's not necessarily creating something for me, but it's analyzing it and giving me its opinion, and then I'm able to strengthen it and improve it. And so that's a great way that I think you're using it. So love to hear that. So moving on, how do you jump in and get started? As I mentioned, AI tools can be very overwhelming. And so I encourage really focusing on these 4 steps and running this type of process. So start with identifying that task, essentially, of what is something that is a high volume task that you either do regularly or takes a lot of time, but really is going to have a low stakes if it doesn't do it well. So something definitely internal. I love that social media calendar is one of the first uses that I did it for. I also did it for suggesting subject lines. I would give it my bulk message that I was going to send to people and then say, provide me 10 subject lines that could work. And every one of those 10 were better than what I would have come up with on my own. And it did a really nice job. And I was able to kind of pick my own, or even use that to create something even better the way that I wanted it to. So, I encourage folks to kind of start with some low stakes, high volume tasks, something you do regularly. And then identify one enthusiastic team member. It might be yourself as maybe that communications person, or somebody who likes AI, but it may be another member of your team who has nothing to do with communication. But what we usually encourage is to define somebody, give them an unofficial title of AI champion, and say it's your job to help us adopt AI at the organization and run experiments, encourage others to use it as well. But kind of create that champion who's going to help you implement and run this experiment. And then run it for a short period of time. Do it in a 30-day period, and evaluate it during that time. Give it a real trial. Don't just do one thing. Don't just say, give me 10 subject lines, and then be like, oh, those are all trash. I'm never using AI again. Continue to refine it and tweak your prompts and play with it so that you see the effect of it, so that you can improve on it. And then track some real good data around it. So how much time did you save by using AI? What was the quality of output? What things still need that human review that Jenna was talking about, which really should be everything. But really defining and writing all that down so that you have some good data that you can look back at the end of the 30 days and say, hey, I actually saved 5 hours using AI, and it created so much more. It created a higher quality output. And being able to have that can then demonstrate that to other people. Documenting that around what works and what didn't is really key, so that as you roll it out to more people, they can kind of see those lessons that you've already learned and move past them. The second thing that you need to do when you're running your thing is choosing a tool. And as Jenna said, she's a Claude person. At Corner Shop, we are as well. We did have a ChatGPT account, but have moved over to Claude because of primarily the coding features that are built into there. Really, these are the four main ones that are out there. You really can't go wrong with any of them. They're all very comparable tools. They all have slightly things that they're better for and slightly things that they're worse at. The main reason I include Gemini and Copilot is because a lot of us already subscribe to Google Workspace or to Office 365. And both of those come with, assuming you have one of those plans, they come with access to either Gemini or Copilot out of the box. And so you already likely have access to a premium account that you don't need to pay any additional money for, and you can take advantage of. And so I'm a big fan of taking advantage of things that are free. So certainly that's where I would recommend starting, is if you already have access to one. But if you don't, certainly take a look at ChatGPT or Claude. Those are great tools. They both have team accounts that you can set up and give users to everyone at your organization. And when you do sign up for the team account, it's going to be more secure, and it's not going to use your data and information to train on. So definitely something to look at. But that is one of the main key point that I encourage people to look at when they are evaluating an AI tool is, what are you doing with my data? So are you keeping the inputs that I put in there private, or are you using it to learn on it? Is it possible that what I type in might come up as an answer for somebody else? Are you able to opt out of the learning and training features? So that's something that I definitely look into. And again, why I encourage the paid accounts is because you do get more locked down versions of those, as well as additional features, higher limits, and all sorts of good stuff. But that being said, there are some great resources out of the free tiers. Some people might have very minimal needs and therefore don't need a full paid account. And if that's okay with your organization, obviously setting up those practices around using those free accounts. One factor is ease of use. I feel that all of these tools are pretty much the same level of ease of use because you get a chat box and you get to interact with them. However, there are some more advanced features or different ways that it interprets prompts. And so sometimes there are going to be ones that will make more assumptions or will not make assumptions. And being able to set up some of those protocols so that your staff can have an easier time using them is always a good solution. And so a lot of times that'll come in the team accounts, is that you can set up rules or organizational branding. For example, in our Claude account, any document is automatically created in our branding. Any content is written in our voice. Thinking about what integrations it has. So like Google, for example, what's great about Gemini is that it's built into all the Google products. So you might be using already Google Docs and Meet for video calls and stuff. And Gemini is already integrated in that. So you can kind of draw upon all of your tools and all of your resources. If you have all your files in Google Drive, it can access and read that. So think of how you integrate your AI tools with the rest of the tools that you use, and make sure that they're available in whatever tool you select. The output quality, I tend to feel that is kind of what you put in is what you get out, and each one is going to be different. But each one does respond a little differently, and it's a good idea to test out different platforms and see if you like or prefer one over another. Like Jenna preferred Claude over ChatGPT. There's really nice ways to do that. And then lastly, obviously, those 4 that I mentioned on the previous screen, they're not going anywhere. They're very stable. But, if next week Bob's AI comes out and is the, next hot thing, will that be around in 2 years? What's the likelihood you're going to have to switch to another platform or it's going to be sold to somebody else? So be careful of some of the smaller, newer tools that are out there, as they may not be around, or they might be sold to larger entities, which will change licensing and pricing structures and things like that over time. So one of the biggest challenges we often hear from nonprofits is, I'd love to use AI, but my board doesn't think we should, or set members of my staff are hesitant to do so. And it is natural. Like, any change is scary, and working through appropriate change management can kind of help soften that and make sure that people are fully bought in and see the benefits of why you're using this technology. So the first thing that I encourage is, don't frame it as technology. People are scared of new technology when it comes out, but if you frame it more as capacity and how this will improve capacity, people are going to be more understanding and appreciate it. So definitely quantify the time savings that you're having with it. So identify some specific tasks and say, hey, this staff member saves this much per week by using AI, which frees them up to do other things, or even just gives them a break, who isn't burnt out. Those kind of things show real value and can demonstrate to board or leadership of why they should invest in it. Other peers are always a great example. So nothing works like peer pressure. So if you know that your competitor organization down the street is using AI, you can talk with them, learn what they've gained, and then share that with your leadership. And then lastly, acknowledge the risk. That's, I think, one thing to really get ahead of it, is say that there is some risk, there is some concerns. We'll talk later on about privacy and other ways that AI can certainly be a little more intimidating for folks. But try to reassure them that that we're aware of these things and we're taking action to make sure that they don't impact us. The big concern is kind of the opposite side for staff. People are worried, like, if I start using AI to do all my work, then it's going to replace me. But as Jenna was saying earlier, that's not what AI is here to do. It's here to take some of those tedious stuff off your plate so that it can be more efficient and you can focus on the things you want to do. So that is kind of the starting point. That's where we've worked with a lot of our employees, a lot of our clients who've been hesitant to buy into some of the AI tools, of really focusing on how this isn't here to replace you. It's here to support you and make it so that you can focus on the things that you want to. Talk through definitely making sure you get some champions on your team who will be other folks aside from you talking it up and encouraging others to adopt AI is always a good thing. But also give people real quick wins. Work with individuals and say, hey, I see that you're spending 10 hours a week on this. Let's use AI and see if we can do it in about 2 hours. And those kind of things become really helpful and appreciated by people. And then lastly, as you start deploying it, make sure you build it into the full workflow. Don't think of AI as like this separate extra thing that's over here that you do later on. That AI should be built into the tasks and processes that people already do, just kind of replacing or tweaking the way that they did it before. So Jenna, I'd love to hear kind of from you on how you navigated some of the internal conversations, and if you got pushback from either the board, if you got some of staff members who are skeptical. How did it go as you started these conversations?
Yeah, so we all kind of came to it a little bit differently, and I'll be honest, I have some colleagues who are like, AI, no, I'm just not. I don't want to use it. I'm not going to use it. And okay, fair. So it's not that we want to force our whole staff to use it. It's more that, when we want to use it, we want to pick that one tool. So as far as the, getting people on board, we're each moving a little bit at our own pace. I think I'm pretty enthusiastic about it. And, I talk to my good friend Claude every day about all kinds of things, and so I'm pretty much it's really a part of my everyday work now. Some of my coworkers are more like they'll use it once in a while, or to summarize a meeting or some meeting notes, or like help me explain this. So we all kind of have our different levels of that. We're working through currently the process of putting together our own policy. So right at this moment, we're kind of in that, yeah, we don't have a formal policy, but we're working on it. So that's coming together now. And now it's the challenge of, how do we define this? What do we need, a policy, or do we need usage guidelines? Probably both. We are a small organization. There's 12 of us. So a huge, substantial, meaty policy maybe isn't what we need. We need a basic policy and then some training one-on-one with our staff. Like, this is what you use it for. This is what you don't use it for. Things like never putting confidential information in there. We don't use names. We don't use phone numbers, emails, and addresses, and all of that. I think it's one of the biggest things that I learned is if you kind of approach AI as, I'm going to put a prompt in and I'm going to get the perfect answer, you're going to be disappointed. You have to kind of go back and forth a little bit. And I'll even go back and forth. And I think I've asked Claude a completely clear question and it comes out with some very strange assumption. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. So it's more of that back and forth conversations. Like, you got to refine this a little bit. It's like, no, sorry, that's not what I meant. This is more of what I'm trying to get at. So you do need to have that little bit of a time. And I think someone who's maybe a little bit more naturally skeptical maybe will look at it and be like, well, I asked it 2 questions and it didn't give me what the information I wanted. So you have to kind of be willing to put in that relationship. Like you had said earlier, Ira, give it a good 30 days at least, let it show you what it can do. And you can tell it too, you can specifically say, don't just agree with me. So a lot of AI tools are kind of set up to be very affirming, right? They want to agree with you, like, yeah, that's a great idea, but I can go in and say, okay, play the devil's advocate, or what viewpoints am I missing out on? Or, don't just agree with me, challenge my assumption that I'm making here, and that I think is really valuable too, because it can be really seductive to fall into that trap. Like, oh, Claude's going to tell me everything I think is a wonderful idea,
Yeah.
But I've gotten kind of to the point where with Claude, where he and I have, it's not a he. That's where my brain goes, so
Yep.
we've been kind of interacting for so long now that, Claude will come back and be like, I'm going to gently push back on that, Jenna, so, because the tool knows that I ask for that sometimes. So I think there are some people who are still skeptical. I think, like you said, don't force it. And we're certainly not at our organization, not going to force anyone to use AI. This isn't something that you have to do. And we also think that there are benefits if you can incorporate the use of this tool to the extent that you're comfortable, and and growing in your comfort and familiarity and ease of use with the tool.
Yeah, well, and it's beneficial as well. Of people do see those earlier adopters being successful. So as those more skeptical people start seeing you get more done, leave work a little earlier, they're probably gonna want to start being like, hey, let me get in on that too.
Absolutely. So one of my coworkers would say, how do you get all so much done? And I'm like, my good friend Claude, I can go through that so much quicker, for some of those tasks it's really very helpful.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned building your AI policy, and that is exactly what's next. So, so hopefully these 5 points here are included in your AI policy. And I think what you said as well, like a lot of people, when they hear AI policy, they think of a big 20-page document that thinks of every possible scenario with AI. And in reality, you don't need that. You really need to focus on these 5 questions as the most important. There are some other things, and it will definitely expand and grow. But from my perspective, these are the top 5 things you should be considering. So first is, what tools are approved? Does the organization only use one tool, or can people create accounts at a wide variety of tools? I listed those 4 at the beginning. There are hundreds or thousands of AI tools that are out there. A lot of things like Grammarly that Jenna mentioned, and things like that, that are, you may not even think of as AI tools. You might just think of them as tools, but in what way can we be using them? It's built into a lot of the other things. Canva has an AI feature built in. Our project management tool, Smartsheet, has AI features built in. And so a lot of those things are just kind of now out of the box with many of the products we use. So defining what tools are approved and how people should be using them. And specifically, if there are any that require approval or things like that, defining what that looks like. As Jenna said, the next most important thing is what data can be entered. So defining and prohibiting things like donor personal information. PII is personal identifying information. So that's things like addresses, the last name, definitely not credit card information or social security numbers, things like that, that's sensitive. But also thinking of your confidential, like, are you working on a secret campaign right now that can't get out to the public, and that you're not utilizing AI in those ways with that. And just being as specific as possible with what data can and cannot be entered. Who reviews AI output? So as we've said before, everything should get a review. And so spelling out what that review process looks like. Does this get centrally reviewed through one person from the marketing team anytime you're generating something? Or is it up to the supervisor? Is it up to yourself? Kind of who does that sign off based on this? And just defining what that process looks like. Number 4 is if you disclose your AI use. And this really speaks to some of the ethical concerns, is that, like, if you're generating images or video or even content from an AI tool, some people are going to think that is especially the image and the more visual content, people might think that is like a real volunteer or something like that. And so, does your organization set some transparency and source that as image created by AI or something like that? Or do you, or are there specific requirements, like some of your grant proposals, that might require you to disclose if you're using AI to write that? So at least thinking about it, most organizations don't have any requirements, but just thinking about how transparent you want to be with your public on how you use AI. And then lastly, of how do you update the policy? AI tools are moving so fast. Every other day, there's some new feature or new change, new model that's coming out that's that might impact your policy. At Cornershop, we built in a monthly review cycle to be looking at our AI policy. That can be overwhelming for some. We use it a bit more than others, I'd say. But I'd recommend at least an every 6-month review. If you can do it quarterly, I think that'd be great as well. But just review that policy, update it regularly with the latest information that's coming out, and what people need to be aware of. And that can go really far in getting folks to adopt it. So you don't have to create this from scratch. There are a ton of resources available, not only for the AI policy, but also other things of getting started. There's lots of toolkits on starter prompts or various things that nonprofits do. So, like, I do know that in pretty much all of these, they have things of, like, here's a prompt for writing donor emails, or here's a prompt for responding to a grant application. Those kind of things are already developed for you at all these resources. So check out TechSoup, N10, Council of Nonprofits, and Candid. Those are my top 4 resources that I like checking out related to these. They all have some sort of like hub or great resources for nonprofits around AI. So definitely, hopefully everyone's had a chance to screenshot this already. If not, we'll be sending these out after the call. And So I mentioned prompts, and for us, one of the biggest things that's been super valuable in having all of us create very consistent voices and really embrace and use AI effectively is to have a shared prompt library where all of our content strategists can see all of our prompts around creating content. All of our developers know what to look for when working on coding. And so there's a million different ways you can organize this. The very simple and easy one is like in a Google Doc or Microsoft Word doc or Notion page that you just kind of list your prompts. We've also seen like you could set up a Google Drive folder where you get a prompt per file, and people can search through them or browse through them however they want. Having some shared library where people can access the prompts you want them to use is a very beneficial thing. We use a paid tool called TextBlaze. We don't get kickbacks or anything, but we do like it, so I'm going to promote it. It is a nice little tool. Basically, we have a library, and you can actually then type in a shortcut at anywhere you want, like your browser or email, and it will just insert that prompt. So it's really great for templates and things that you reuse a lot. So really cool thing, and it's only about $3 per user per month, so pretty affordable for a paid tool, and goes a long way. So yeah. So no AI presentation is complete without talking about prompt engineering. Hopefully folks are familiar with this, but to me, I boil it down to 3 simple things. Start with an action, a task of what you want it to do. So write 3 versions of a social media post for Facebook announcing this event. Then the second thing is give it the context and examples. And I have found this is the most important phase of the more context and background you give your AI tool, the better output you're going to get, because it's going to have a lot more information. If I just say write 3 versions of social post, it's going to give me something okay. But if I say, here's the flyer for the event, here's last year's social post, here's a bunch of other marketing material we've created for this event, it's going to have so much more context, and it's going to create much more specific and detailed response for me. And then the last thing is I basically tell it how I want the content to be outputted. So really focusing on tone and format. So, do I want it warm and friendly, or do I want it humorous? Do I want it serious and professional? Do I want it in a Google Doc? Do I want it in Markdown format? Like defining how you're going to get it. If you don't tell it what you want it in, it's going to guess at a format, and it may be the wrong format, and then that's going to frustrate you. So really boiling it down and thinking of those 3 things as you're developing your prompt is really useful. And as long as you're including those, I think you will usually get what you want. So we kind of talked about a lot of this throughout, but for us, using AI is important because and can make a big impact, but you want to use it responsibly. You don't want to be taking advantage of tools. You don't want to be taking advantage of your team. You want to be making sure that your data is as secure as possible, and you're thinking of privacy, as we've talked about. But watch out for things like bias and hallucinations. AI tools has a tendency of making things up. I know early on, one of the first things I asked ChatGPT to do was create I was doing a trivia night, and I asked it to create a trivia, a bunch of questions and answers. And I actually did a pretty good job for general trivia. One of the categories is actually about Corner Shop Creative, and it completely made up every answer. So it's always funny to kind of see when it does that, but knowing that you always need humans to stay in the loop. This is not a replacement. You should never take what you get and just put it up somewhere, because chances are there's going to be information that's incorrect or not said the way you want it to. And making sure that you are staying in the loop, I think, really takes that to that next step, and make sure that that you're using it in the most effective way. We talked about transparency a little bit earlier regarding your policy, but transparency does build trust. So if you tell people how you're using it, they're more likely to trust you and respect the content and the information you're putting out. So we do encourage that transparency, and we encourage you to keep learning. So, the space is changing quickly. So build in that time for you and your team to stay current and learn the ways and what's changing so that you can be using AI most effectively and responsibly within the nature of things. I know 2-3 years ago, there was a lot of concerns around copyrights and things like that, especially with images and videos. There still are, that it might be drawing and getting inspiration from people's copyrighted works. And so that is a serious concern and something you should address with your team. As we decided we don't generate images because we're unsure of how it's going to be done, or we only use this specific tool that we vetted and know that it doesn't draw upon those. So keep learning, keep building that trust with your employees and colleagues so that everybody kind of knows the process and how we're moving forward. So just a few common pitfalls. I wrote these all in the negatives, but a lot of the things that we've talked about today. So make sure you always edit your AI outputs. It's never going to be perfect. Pay attention to data privacy. The perfect tool. That is something we've heard from a lot of folks say around AI is, oh, it's not perfect right now, so I'm waiting till it gets better. It's never going to be perfect. And if you're waiting for that perfect tool, you're going to be waiting forever. So the time to get started is now, and really working. And the more that it learns from you, the better the output is going to be. One thing we've seen is that people say, hey, here's our AI policy. Good luck. And so it's really important to make sure you train and provide resources for your team. Cornershop, we had a series of trainings around different uses of AI. And then we also had a bunch of office hours that we offered to people so that, if people had questions, we could just come and talk about them or do live experiments together. And then we also gave people individual time so that they could play with and set up the tools on their own and configure things in a way that was going to work for them, as well as experiment and test out different prompts. And then lastly, this is not like the office printer. AI is not just belong to one person. This is the responsibility of everybody to really know and utilize and be championing it. So kind of make sure you build it into your full processes, not just isolating it on one person. So Jenna, I'd love to hear one, finally from you, of kind of what you feel is working best for AI right now at CCYF.
Yeah, so I think the most essential thing for me is the thought partnership. So I can just kind of go in with some half-form ideas and say, help me make sense of this all. And, I know that sounds kind of loose, but it really isn't. It can really kind of help me order my thoughts. And that's been very essential, that thought partnership for me. Practically, things like planning, drafting, creating messaging for 2 Instagram accounts, 2 Facebook accounts, a LinkedIn account, drafting all of that and kind of working with our brand kits and everything. And that's really been a practical help. You mentioned, the prompts and the tasks. I did create a handbook of prompts and tasks that, each month so when I'm going back each month and I'm saying, I have a new resource I need to promote. I went to Claude one day and I said, you know what, we do the same thing month after month. We promote this resource, or we promote this webinar, or we put together the social media calendar for the coalition. Give me a prompt. What's helpful for me to tell you? And then I can just kind of go in and say, okay, September, here's the dates that we need to, here's what's coming up. Here's what we already have. So creating that handbook of tasks and prompts has been really helpful for me. And I can envision that being more helpful as more of our staff start using AI and signing on to Claude and learning how that all works. Meeting preparation is really helpful for me. That works for me a lot, so I can just take the agenda and say, here's the agenda for what we're talking about. Can you help me think through these things, or, I want to have 4 bullet points that I can share in the meeting. Just kind of helps me as someone who really likes to prepare heavily. I kind of panic when I'm not prepared. So it helps me kind of get my ducks in a row for meeting preparation. And then post-meeting processing is really helpful too, whether it's just my notes or if we've done like, the AI tool, the note taker tool, so what are the main things that came out of that meeting? And I think one thing that really doesn't get talked about enough is AI is going to compound. So the longer you work with it, the more you learn what to bring, how to frame a request, what to expect back. It's gonna compound your experience and your ease of use with it. So again, going back to that, you can't just try it once or twice and, I don't like it or I do like it. Really kind of get into that groove with it because it's going to get easier. Think of it as any relationship, any new coworker, any new person you meet, the longer you interact with them and you know how to ask things and bring things up, that just improves. So I think that's something to keep in mind too, is that really, I hesitate to use the word relationship, but in this context, the relationship of the user to the tool is going to compound and improve. What do I wish I had known earlier? Find out for yourself. So there's a lot of people talking about AI, a lot of trusted folks talking about AI. Try it for yourself. A lot of when I first started really using it, it's like, oh, AI is dangerous. It's reductive. It's beneath your experience. You're smarter than AI. And looking back on that, it's like, good cautions, thank you. And I'm also smart enough to know how to work with this tool and get this to be a tool that I can work with. So really there's no substitute for doing it yourself and trying it out and finding out for yourself. So I think that's one of the things I wish I had known sooner, that it's not going to. I know I'm a Gen X. I grew up with Terminator 2. I get it. It's not sentient, So I know all those fears. iRobot was on TV the other day, so I know all those fears. But really, AI isn't going to take over. It's going to take over for people who don't know how to use it, So I think that's really the best thing, is like, don't let somebody else's experience dictate how it's going to work or not work for you.
I love that. And I think that's really important, is of just continuing to test, experiment. I think we wrote into our AA policy, one of the first things it says is, you are going to fail. Like you're gonna write a prompt and it's not going to give you what you want. And so, you don't give up right away. It's just like any other tool. It's, if you don't get something you want, you don't just give up. You keep working at it and you keep making it until it works. And now, honestly, like, I'm very much with you. Now I've been using it for so long, I rarely have issues. I almost always get exactly what I'm looking for. So yeah, the longer you use it, the better the output becomes. Great. So just to kind of summarize or kind of put this back up there, again, really focus on that 30-day action plan. Start with identifying that one low volume task. Start by spending 30 minutes experimenting in one of the tools. Next week you can kind of share with what you've learned with one colleague, maybe who that AI champion would be, identify that person and start talking and working with them. Weeks 3 and 4, you can kind of draft a simple one-page AI policy and start a shared prompt library that folks will have. And then start expanding that pilot in month 2 to other people. So really kind of thinking through these things throughout. So I think that's all we had here. I would love if we can, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll look to see. I don't think there's any questions. We did have one that came in so far, but if folks have other questions, feel free. Do you make the training mandatory for everyone, even if they are the people who are not going to use the tools and be slower adopters? So again, this can vary by organization. I think, if you're in a small organization, I think it's a good idea to invite everybody to that training and have kind of that shared experience. But if for others, that may be too overwhelming, or you don't want to introduce them too soon. So if you're just kind of starting with your champions or a smaller team, you might want to just roll it out and not invite those other people initially. But definitely, I think it can and does create some camaraderie and at least knowledge and know-how of this is what the other people are working. Can sometimes be overwhelming to know, oh, everybody else is doing something over there and I'm not. Can actually be scarier for some people than not inviting them at all. So I would encourage, especially for smaller teams, inviting folks, and even if they're not going to adopt right away. Jenna, anything to add there?
No, I would definitely agree. I would default to yes. I would say include everybody, because you don't know when the day might come when they want to use that, and then they'll at least have that foundation. I think it's always good to, make that open, and maybe it's something that you can do and you can record it, something like this. And okay, so you're not going to use this right now. You don't feel that you're not going to be a big heavy adopter right away, but then they'll have kind of that foundation to go back on, and maybe be a little bit more willing to jump in, because they don't have to go back and go, now who do I ask about this? They know where that introductory material is.
Jenna, I'm going to bounce around. I'm going to try to pull up an example of a prompt library here. But Jenna, somebody asked if you could say a little bit more about how you use AI for meeting prep. I think that's a great use. It's something I do as well. But yeah, I'd love if you could say more about that.
Yeah. So what I like to do is, because I have so many different conversations throughout the week, and, Claude remembers these things, certainly. So I will say, I usually share the full agenda. So I'll upload the document, like, here's my agenda, and Claude will kind of give me a prompt back and say, what are you looking for? Or, now I've gotten into the habit of, this is what I'd like to dive into. I will say something like, today we're talking about our AI policy. And here's a draft that we were kicking around between the leadership team. I know you and I talked about this the other day. What key points should I bring into the room with me? So it just kind of helps me to help me bring in those key things that I want to say in the room. I'm someone who, I mentioned that I like to prepare a lot, and I can sometimes freeze when I don't feel that I'm prepared enough. Like, somebody's asked me a question and I don't have, the capital T, the answer, so it's like, oh, I better not say anything because I don't want to say the wrong thing. So having that agenda in advance, and I can say, what should I bring into the meeting with me? Or conversely, if it's something that, I don't know what I'm going to say to this, are there questions I should ask? Maybe I can help with a conversation with AI on the topic. I can come up with some questions that I'll have at the ready in the room, so I can be an engaged and thoughtful part of the conversation, even when I'm not quite sure about where I can contribute. It can just kind of give me those leading prompts, those leading thoughts, those leading questions. I Claude and I like to call them the things to bring in the room with me. So these are the things I want to bring in the room with me. In addition, the other thing that I created with the help of Claude was a meeting framework for myself. I'm someone, I don't know, a lot of people like, oh, a thought enters my head and I can follow that thought. And then all of a sudden I'm not present in the room. So we came up with a meeting framework that I create for myself. And, before every meeting, I have my notebook, and I'm an analog girl. I know I'm talking a lot about AI, but I am an analog girl. So, I write my intention at the top. In this meeting, I tend to be present, or, I intend to be here and contribute. And then I have two columns. I've got one column that's titled What's Being Said and what is coming to mind, so it's kind of a pressure valve for me, so it helped me come up with that to help me prepare for meetings too. So if there's particular things that you notice about yourself while you're in meetings, or things that you leave a meeting and you're thinking, hey, I wish I would have done that. That happens to me a lot. I come up with the best things to say about 4 hours after a meeting or a conversation. It never fails. That's how I always am. just kind of running that meeting agenda and that thought process with AI helps me feel more prepared and more confident as I'm walking into the room.
Those are great points. And I actually love it for the follow-up. That's where I really do, is especially having a dedicated note taker on so many of my calls, to be able to more simply and effectively be like, okay, I even summarize at the end. I even say on my calls, like, okay, here are my next steps. And then the note taker takes that and very clearly has my next steps that I can copy and paste in an email to my client or to my colleagues or whoever I'm working with. And it just, to me, it makes even the next steps and the post meeting work so much easier. So I'm going to share, we got some questions around what does a prompt library look like, and I'm going to share one. It was not one that I actually shared in the resources, but is a great example. It's from Bloomerang, actually, that they have published on their website, basically a nonprofit AI prompt examples. And so these are some of the categories, it was asked around, how do you set this up? At Corner Shop and TextBlaze, we set it up by role, essentially. So we have a bunch of prompts for project managers, a bunch of prompts for content strategists, for developers. Most nonprofits I've been seeing have been setting it up around that kind of same thing, around the functions. Is this for fundraising and development, marketing and communications? And you can see as you expand these, they have some of these things. So rewrite the mission statement to make it more inspiring, accessible, and donor-centric. And so it's, copying this, and that's your prompt. So it could be as simple as something like this, where you're just putting it in a page or a Google Doc or a Word document and having everything. There are tools that are out there. I believe, actually, when I was just Googling yesterday, I saw that there is actually even a website, aipromptlibraries.com, that you can go and create. They hold a prompt library for you that you can upload your prompts for. So there are definitely even some new services, but these are some great default prompts and messages that you can do. This is great for the organization of how you set that up, so you can kind of break things down by that role and how people are using them. So
I can share too, just a little bit. So one prompt I mentioned is a monthly resource promotion. So my prompt, and this is certainly something I can share with you, Ira, and if you want to share as an example with the recording or anything like that. So I say I need a full promotional kit for a new monthly resource. Here's the content, and then I say, please create the following: email, SMS, a Facebook post, an Instagram post, and then I put in some important brand rules. This is for the Wisconsin Family Connection Center channels, or for example, or this is for the coalition branding. Please don't include any fundraising language, or lead with a human story whenever possible. Warm, accessible, family-centered tone throughout. So those are kind of some of the more dialed in, specified prompts that I use on an ongoing basis, specifically for my work. Whereas I think, so they're the more nitty-gritty in the details prompts that I've kind of come to, rather than the generic out of the box prompts that you can kind of work with and make your own too. So I've kind of made it my own already.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So yeah, we'd love to share that. So I think that's perfect timing. We're right at the top of the hour here. So I think we're going to wrap things up. If people have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. hello@Cornershop Creative. You can reach out to Jenna. Her email is on that last slide. Hopefully folks got. You can always connect us through Cornershop as well. But we're always happy to talk with folks about the way you're adopting it or how we can incorporate it more. But really appreciate everybody's time. If you're attending the Bridge Conference next week in the DC area and you want to hear this talk again, Jenna and I will be there. We'll also be talking about how you can get more exposure in ChatGPT. So great sessions will be happening next week. And thank you for your time today, and have a great day.